How the mind and body actually work together is an amazing starting place. When you bring your attention into the present moment, you're going to find peace. When you do hear a negative thought, don't necessarily fight that, but just add the opposite to it immediately after. When you're being grateful for what you have right now, all of a sudden it gets really easy. We got to wherever we are. If we're miserable, if our business sucks, whatever it is, we got to where we are by taking actions.
All right. So, welcome to another episode with Michael Wood. We were just talking, and I told him that I'm on testosterone, and he had said he had a voice in his head that basically was. I'll just let you kind of take it from here, Michael.
You know, I basically I believe at this point in my life that supplements and medicine at a lower level I won't take because I feel like my mind will can fix any of these problems, can solve any of the problems going on inside of my body. I've kind of proven it to myself, and
Yeah. Go ahead.
the spoken word I truly believe at this point is creating our realities. What we speak out loud, what we are constantly thinking of. If you want to know what's going on in your world, if you constantly will just pause and take stock, even write it down on a piece of paper and figure out what is actually going on in your mind and pay attention to the words that you're actually speaking out into the universe, and you'll realize really quick those two things are connected. Uh, they correlate with what's actually happening. You start to change them, and you'll see a physical change in the physical world.
You said you had you've had experiences with this. Is there an experience that comes to mind that?
Yeah, just stuff, pain, physical pain in my body. I started taking magnesium because it was helping me with my back, and it was help keeping me a little more regular with my digestion. If I didn't take magnesium, I would feel back pain, and I would get pretty much constipated. And yeah, 6 months later, I haven't taken magnesium in 3 months. I'm as regular as I ever have been. And it's just a simple process of me identifying what was going on and saying it in my mind. Sounds kind of crazy, but I'm starting to see it physically work. Me making a conscious effort to say and act in a certain way and make sure that when I speak very consciously and relay the words that I want to create in my reality instead of a reaction of I'm not this or I'm not that. Because anytime we say I am and then whatever follows, that's what we're going to create. And we have to be very careful when we use those statements. I don't think most people understand the magnitude of it.
The thing that comes to my mind, obviously, there's the health side of things, which is going to resonate with a certain person, but let's say it's not just for health, it's for anything, right? So
Oh
like
yeah,
for someone who tells themselves every day, like I remember, you talking about how you just didn't feel very smart growing up. You felt maybe like an idiot. And so if you tell yourself every day you're an idiot,
the world's going to treat you that way. Yeah, it's going to constantly remind you that you're not smart enough, and nope, you can't go here because you're not smart enough. But if you reframe that to like, hell, I'm brilliant, I'm intelligent, And most people, when you say stuff like that about yourself, it feels wrong. It feels like a lie. Um, that's just the program that you've already put in place.
so for someone who has that program, because like it's obviously been going on for a very long time. Like obviously for you, it's going on for a long time. How does one begin to? Because I don't think it's a. I think everyone, somebody who's listening to this has probably dealt with these negative thoughts or negative beliefs, self beliefs, or have this negative self talk, and they've tried to be more positive, but the main thing is that the feeling doesn't resonate there, where when they feel like an idiot, they feel
Yeah.
like an idiot. So how do you, because I think that's part of the reason it doesn't stick is because the feeling isn't there. You feel like you're like psyching yourself out. How do you get around that?
Well, it's not easy, but the biggest thing is just realizing what's happening. Having that awareness that uh, when you say something like that, that you do have a physical reaction. Now, wait a minute. If I try to like relate it for myself personally. I would be like, all right, so what would I want my kid to say about himself? Because it's always easy for everybody to show unconditional love for their kid, but it's really hard for us to do that with ourselves. So when I'm trying to figure out if I'm right or wrong about something, if I just remove me and put my kid in my place, it's very easy for me to say, oh, yeah, I am beautiful. I am smart. I am intelligent, because that's what you want your kid to say, right? Your little girl, she comes to you and she's 12 years old and she says she's stupid. What would you tell her to say? You know, yeah, you could be like, no, that's terrible. You are intelligent. You are smart. You are all these beautiful things, and you want her to do that, but then we can't. Why can't we say the same things about ourselves? And it kind of breaks. I think you have to logically break down some of it before you ever really try. Because if you don't logically break down some of it with just awareness, it is too heavy because it's a program, right? How do you rewrite a program? You can't go into your computer and start talking to it and tell it to automatically rewrite the program that it's in there. It's not going to work. But there, once you understand what the program is telling you, what that you're actually operating on a program. Now all of a sudden there's an awareness of what's happening, and then you realize, okay, well that's not real. That's just a program. I actually, I'm not that dumb. I'm smart over here, and you know what I mean. Like you can start rationalizing with it, and I feel like that breaks some of the walls down a little bit.
Yeah. I feel the walls come down just now, by the way, like a little bit for me.
Yeah, it just once you start to understand that perception of what's happening. But I had a girl that she had some really bad self-talk, and she's probably 27, 28 years old. And when she was really young, she had, a caregiver, um, basically make her feel like she was going to be judged the rest of her life based off of her looks. And so her job, the status of her getting married, all of that was going to depend on her looks. And I'm sitting here talking to her, and she was basically revealing to me that she just had the negative self-talk that it had cuss words about herself. Like, you are just an ugly bitch. You are just terrible things that was coming out of her mind. And it was a program. And as I was talking to her, I was like, you realize that you are the witness of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. And for her, that was just like a mind shattering moment of like, what? I'm not my thoughts. It's, no, you're the one witnessing them. And when you hear those negative thoughts, you could follow it up with an opposite. And that's a good way to get started with what you're asking the question, like, how do you deal with this? Is, okay, when you do hear a negative thought, don't necessarily fight that, but just add the opposite to it immediately after it. So respond consciously when you hear it, when you recognize it, and then you respond. After about a week of doing this consciously all day, every day, your mind will just automatically start doing that on its own. So you've now just wrote a new program that says, negative thought, I'm not smart enough. Positive thought that says, I am smart enough. I am intelligent. And so those two things start to counterbalance each other. And then over time, that program will start to manually go. Like, you could also go to the root of some of these things and rewrite programs and speed the process up. But if you're going to just try to meet it program versus program, uh, you got to understand the program first, which is bringing awareness to your thoughts.
So for someone who, you just mentioned something that was mind blowing to someone, one of your students. I'm wondering, how did you get her to realize that she's the witness of her thoughts, not she is her thoughts, which most people think?
Just basically saying what I just said to you is, just understanding that the thoughts are just regurgitated memories from the past. That's the only place that all your thoughts can come from. Like, it's just your subconscious mind is trying to protect you from something that bad happened to you in the past, and it's trying to scan for future threats of the same thing. So anything that might remind her that she's not pretty enough, she's constantly scanning for that, which is causing her pain all day long because that's all she's looking for. So when she understood that for a moment, because nobody had ever told her that you are the witness of her thoughts, and then she started to realize that, okay, wait a minute, this is just coming from the past, and it's me trying to protect me from that happening again. Okay, now there's some sympathetic, some compassionate feelings towards what's actually happening. Those thoughts that are actually happening. That's the younger self, 20 years ago at 7 years old, being told these things that are she was going to be judged off of her image for the rest of her life. So, and how does a 7-year-old process that information, right? If you were told that right now, somebody tells you that right now, you're able to go, well, now wait a minute. That's, you've got a handful of years of life to give you enough knowledge to make that right. But when you're caregiver, somebody that you entrust your life to, tells you something like that at 7 years old, that's real. Like, you believe every word of it, and it sinks in pretty deep. So just helping her understand the awareness of what was actually happening, not trying to fix the problem, just bringing awareness to those thoughts, and the reality that they're not real.
So obviously, a big part of replacing those programs is grace, its innocence, because you mentioned like imagine it was your child, and I'm wondering if there's some thoughts where like I know that, for example, if you're seeing yourself as, if someone just goes all day, I don't have money. I don't have money. There's just like this, kind of overwhelming concern of money in the US right now, especially for younger people. And if you're just, you're listening to these statistics like, no, the average, house price is up by 2.5x, or, millennials, or sorry, Gen Zs won't be able to afford a house till they're 40 now, and there's all this lack and it's being perpetuated. And I'm wondering what role gratitude plays. Is it gratitude that you would kind of use as like to make someone realize, oh, I actually do?
Yes, gratitude works in so many ways. Um, so gratitude will basically just reframe everything, because like the Buddhists have this exercise of 2,000 things, that right, and there's at any one moment there's 2,000 things for you to be grateful for. And in that state of mind, in a state of gratitude, when you're basically looking around and going, I'm grateful for my water bottle, I'm grateful for my phone, I'm grateful for this conversation with you, I'm grateful for the air in my lungs, your body and your mind starts to shift into a place of, you have everything. You're basically communicating to the world that you have everything. And in that state, you can receive anything and everything. And when you do the opposite, and you're in a perpetual state of lack, I can't afford anything, I don't have enough money, all these things, now all of a sudden you're in a state of panic. Your body is in a physical state of panic with cortisol pumping through it, and you're projecting out into the world. No, I have a lack. And then the world's going to give you back what you have. I hear it a lot that, working with anxiety and depression with my program, people identify with anxiety. They say, oh, my anxiety was flaring up. Oh, my anxiety this and my, it's like, it's not your dog, like that anxiety is not a part of you. Don't say my anxiety, because as soon as you say my anxiety, it is now something that your subconscious mind is pulling in, like, oh yeah, you have anxiety, we're going to show you like your anxiety, because that's part of you, that now becomes part of who you are. And I just don't think that people understand the power of the spoken word. To get back to the conversation that we're having, like, shit, like if I'm saying that I have that my anxiety, your subconscious mind is going to bring you all those anxious feelings on a daily basis, just to show you that you have your anxiety there with you. Just, just like bringing your dog to work, you're bringing your anxiety to work. just how the mind and body works. We are literally creating our worlds, and it sounds silly to some, but once you dive in and you really become aware of what's happening in your brain, and you just take it out of here and put it on a piece of paper and say, all right, these are the thoughts that I had. You start logging them down, and you say, all right, I said this today, this was negative, said this was positive. And then, all right, now look at your world and compare it to what you just wrote down on that piece of paper. And they're gonna mirror every time. They're gonna mirror each other virtually every time. And when you realize, okay, that those match. Now, what happens when I do change my thoughts? All right, let's just see what happens. Let's do an experiment for 1 month. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to put sticky notes on the bathroom. I'm going to put sticky notes in my car. I'm going to put sticky notes on my computer at work. I'm going to have a screensaver and say something positive. And every time I see any of this stuff, I'm going to make those statements and I'm going to change my thoughts. See what happens in your life in the next month. Just give it a shot, and you'll just be amazed, and you'll never turn back, because everything just it doesn't take that long, and it all just starts to shift and change, and uh, all of a sudden the things that you wanted you have, and now you're looking around going, all right, what do I want now? Like you almost have to stop and go, wait a minute, I have to be grateful for everything I got right now, because this is all the shit I was asking for a year ago that I didn't have, and now I have it. This is amazing, but we don't even do that. Like, we could shift our mind and get all these things, and then be just in the same place, because that's the nature of our of humans is we don't naturally gravitate towards being grateful. We naturally gravitate towards how to survive, how to navigate the world, how to find something else, how to grow, and in that environment, there's just a lot of negativity in it.
When you really want something, it literally means you don't have it. So I think we live in a world of perpetual desire, which is also going to give you perpetual lack. And I kind of imagine sometimes, actually pretty frequently, especially when I find myself thinking about lack and I get to gratitude, like you're saying, I can't help but have the judgment on my previous self of like, you spoiled brat. I wouldn't give anything to you. The last thing you said would make you happy didn't make you happy. You're asking for more. And so I think the world is just, at least in the West, in a perpetual state of spoil. And if they would just see that, I think, kind of seeing themselves, like if you were to give your kid something and it makes them happy for 2 seconds and then they never go and thank you again for it ever, or like are not happy with it, and there's always this lack. It sometimes feels like this forever void that, oh, that's not going to fill it. Why are you believing that?
And it's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard lesson to learn. You really have to bring your attention into the present moment. You can't be time traveling. If your brain is time traveling, you're not there. You can't do it. You can't time travel and 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 bring your attention into the present moment. But when you're being grateful for what you have right now, not about the past, not about the future, for what you have right now, all of a sudden it gets really easy. But our minds are been trained. They have been trained to time travel. We were told as kids, hey, you gotta do good in school so you can go to college. You got to do good in college to get that job. So at a very early age, we were time traveling. We were taught to time travel into middle school, into high school, into college or after. And so whatever was happening today was going to create that out there. And I just feel like we've been manipulated in a way, knowingly or unknowingly, that we're not happy right now. Like, that we're not fulfilled. We're not enough right now. And it can definitely be a form of manipulation. And there's rumors about why we were all taught to be uh, factory line workers, because that's pretty much what we've been taught in basic elementary school and high school in the United States. And there's not really much to be gained out of the school that we get. You learn how to read, write, and do math. Okay, I get it. We all got to do that, the basic fundamentals. But our history that we get taught it's not real history, and Nobody learns emotional intelligence. They don't learn that your body is basically can be manipulated with your breath. You know, we don't nobody gets taught how to manage your emotions. These are all things that are important, and we're not teaching anybody any of that stuff. And if we did, it would, we would have a much happier, healthier society if we, at least, at the very least, integrated some of that stuff. We don't do it, and then we wonder why everybody is upset and miserable. Um, and it's literally just time traveling. It once you understand it and you live it on the other side, it's so easy to see. It's like, holy shit! It's like the Wizard of Oz. At the end when the big scary man, and then all of a sudden you pull back the curtain and it's just this little old dude, behind the curtain with a megaphone. And once you see that's who it is talking, you're never going to be afraid of him again. It's the same thing with understanding how miserable everybody is, and it's when you bring your attention into the present moment, you're going to find peace one way or the other. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but it's difficult at first because we are literally programmed to go both ways, into the future and into the past. Until we break that, it's going to be hard to find peace and bring all the things the material things into your life that you want, because the program is pushing them away from you.
Yeah. I like to think of peace as rest. It's like it seems like my mind's on alert a lot. And then it's like I get these moments and they typically in the same environments. Like I'll just be walking outside on I live on 10 acres, so I'll just be walking in the grass with no shoes on, just feeling the grass, feeling the sun. And I just know and it brings me into the present, which naturally brings peace, and I'm not thinking about anything. I usually don't even have my phone on me when I do this stuff. So I'm just out there like totally losing track of the things that I should be, tracking just to give myself some rest. And I could sit out there for a long time, like just out there, just watching my dog in the field, just chasing a butterfly or something. It seems so goofy, or seeing my cat, because I have a cat also doing that. And yeah, it's so also there's different environments, for, I guess it might vary from person to person that can bring you that.
I think what you said there is beautiful, because that's exactly how it is. It's meaningless things that become the most meaningful things. But it doesn't matter if you do that sitting at your desk, if you do it in a field where you're grounded with your feet touching the ground. That environment is much more conducive for it, because you can feel your feet on the ground, right? It's abnormal. It's not normal. So that grass is poking the bottom of your feet and brings awareness to your feet. Then you look up, you feel the sun down on you. So now you're feeling something else in the present moment. And then all of a sudden, now you're engaged with your dog, something else that's happening in the present moment. All these things start happening in the present moment. And the future and the past go away, and you're actually living in the present moment. Hollywood does a wonderful job of telling us how messed up we are at times, and I think it's no coincidence that there's an abundance of zombie movies. And because I truly feel like, and science will even prove this, that we live 95% of our days on autopilot. You were sitting out there in that grass, what you just described, living in that present moment. That's the 5% of the days where you actually live in the present moment, and you're peaceful and you're joyful and you're happy. You can't even feel anything else in those moments but joy, but peace. But it's not like fireworks going off. It's just a calm that comes over you, and then it's gone, because the phone's ringing, you got a kid crying or something. You get back into the world, and what I got to do tomorrow, and oh man, we're out of this. Got to go to the grocery store, and all of a sudden things start moving, and here we go again. We're back on autopilot. But when we learn to bring our attention into those moments purposely, and we take that 5% to 10%, and then we take that 10% to 15, and 15 to 20, and now all of a sudden we're doing things all throughout the day manually to pull ourselves into those moments, so those moments aren't random, and we do them on purpose, and we can expand that 5-10%. And it life gets pretty cool when you start to do it, because you don't have to get to 100% for your life to be really good. Um, You just got to start expanding on that.
I had a coach who, like, my main goal has been money for the most part since, turned 18 years old, getting out into the workforce. And that is a Dave Cashin guy that we've talked about a few times. And I mentioned this stuff to you, and he was just like, I think you have the wrong goal. I think it's the wrong goal. I'm like, oh really? And he was like, I think your goal should be to be more present. And that stuck out to me. So just reverberating everything you're saying, with, you know, I definitely agree with that based on my experience as well. So I wanted to ask you, because you have some books coming out. What's the thing? Let's just talk about the first book that you're coming out with. What's the theme of that? What's the central point you're trying to get across? And what is it that you put in that you saw was missing from like any other kind of spiritual, self-help book that you've read? Like, what was missing in those that you're putting in this?
Action items, right? So what we're talking about right here is where the book starts, is bringing your attention into the present moment, but then teaching people how to do it. A lot of people turn to Christianity, into the Bible, or they go to a therapist, and they go to a lot of different places, and they try a lot of things. But from my experience, nobody gets action items, right? And that's one of the things I learned here at work, um, helping build a company to where it is right now, um, being successful in some way. When I learned a long time ago, whenever we had a meeting, it didn't matter what it was about. If it was an important meeting, you gathered up a bunch of people. For it to be a successful meeting, at the end of the meeting, there needed to be action items. Like, all right, what did we learn out of here? What are we going to actually do as a result of us sitting here talking? Because we could all just talk for a month, but if you don't actually do anything, so action items are a big deal. All right, and when you leave that meeting and you go do those things, and like, all right, who's going to do this, who's going to do this, how long is it going to take, all right, ready, go. And so a week later we're better because of it. And that's how I feel about this book. Is everybody talks about anxiety, everybody talks about depression, and they go to therapists, and they go to church, and they go to wherever they feel pulled to find peace. And I'm not saying that any of those things are bad, but a lot of times you don't get action items. You don't really understand what's happening. And so two things that's in this book is, one is action items, and then the second thing is actually learning how the mind and body actually work. So the title of this book is One Brave Breath, the owner's manual for being human. And having that understanding of how the mind and body actually work together is an amazing starting place, right? And then having action items to actually be able to say, all right, if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to get these results. And it's proven. Like, you can't argue with any of it. If you do these things, you will get these results. This is how the human system works. And I think that's what sets me apart from all the other books out there.
That's really cool. I like that. I like that meeting analogy. I've never thought of it like that, but you'd be right, man. If I read a book, or if I went to a meeting that nothing got done, and the purpose of the meeting for me showing up there was to talk about something that obviously we want to accomplish, or an end result, which every book promises an outcome, but it didn't give me anything, it would just be like, well, that was a waste of 4 hours of my life, you know? So it makes a lot of sense. I like that. I was not expecting that kind of answer. It seems so simple, but yeah.
Yeah, you gotta do something. Like, we got to wherever we are. If we're miserable, if our business sucks, whatever it is, we got to where we are by taking actions, or lack of.
Yeah.
The only way we're going to change is to do something, to physically do something, to take actions, to take steps. You know, and that's the logic behind it. It's almost too simple, but
Yeah.
I've seen it happen in my working career, and in a lot of the self help books that I've read, and I've read a lot of them. And they give you a lot of really good information, and I do think the information is very valuable. I'm not discounting that, but I want to change, right? I want to physically change, and so what do I do? How do I do it? Like, show me, give me something to go do right now that I can change my life, and so that's kind of how I approach this book and really my life, at work in this book and just trying to constantly work on myself every day. I try to have something to focus on to better myself.
Absolutely. So if someone reads the book, what would be the one thing you want them to take away from it?
I'd love for them to just actually learn how the system works, have all that knowledge to be like, holy moly, oh, that's why this is happening? Oh, I'm not broken. I just didn't know how I was working. Okay, yeah, now that makes sense. That's what I would hope anybody got out of this thing is that, hey, I'm not broken. I didn't even understand what was happening. And it's just, ignorance is bliss. In a lot of people's case, ignorance is pain and suffering. And I'd just like to shed that light because it doesn't mean that once you have this knowledge that all of a sudden, you're going to have magical rosy thoughts show up in your head and, everything's just going to be perfect. But it takes the hopelessness away of like you have all these feelings and then you're just stuck with them. You just shove them down in a box and you don't deal with them. No, now the negative thoughts come up and the negative emotions. But okay, now all right, I know where that's coming from, and I can make that go away, or I can put table that, and I can manually make myself feel better right now and do that later. I don't have time to deal with that right now. I will come back to you later when I have time. But right now, I got things to do. My kid's birthday party. I just need to be able to focus on that. I'm going to manually bring myself into a peaceful, happy place. I'm going to have the best birthday party a 1-year-old kid could ever have, and then boom, move on with my day. And then come back to that thing 4 days later when you have an hour and a half of quiet time to be able to address that thing. Then you can address it, make that thing go away forever, and then you move on with your life. And then slowly, incrementally, you remove things that haunt you that never come back. So you're genuinely healing and growing as a person, but then you're also experiencing life and you're increasing that 5% to 10% or 12% or 15%, and your life and your relationships all grow because one of the most important things that I think we can give anyone, and most people never talk about this, but if you're going to give, I'm going to give you my love and I'm going to give you my money or I'm going to give you, but the most important thing you can truly give anybody is your time, your presence. Being present with them and giving them your time is the most valuable thing that you can give anybody. We all take that for granted. But when we bring our attention into the present moment and we're grateful right now for being on this podcast, right now with you, Evan, like I am giving my attention to you and I'm nowhere else. I'm not thinking about what else I'm going to do. And that is valuable. And it's not, people don't truly know how to do that because our phones are going off or we're sitting here having dinner with our spouse or we're talking to a coworker and we're thinking about the next thing and we're not truly listening and we're not truly present with somebody. And now all of a sudden, we're not making a true connection with somebody. So
we're like zombies.
Yeah, exactly. Good conversation.
I was looking at, as you're thinking about distractions, I naturally started looking at distractions in your background. I was like, or I could look at the fish, the fish are moving around, doing their thing. But I wanted to ask you about the Learn to Love Being You program. It's 10 weeks. Yeah. Just curious, why 10 weeks? What's happening inside a person across that timeline that can't be compressed into a shorter time frame?
Everybody's different, and I'd say some people could probably take it in a shorter time frame. But I'll say the reason why it's 10 weeks is because it's hard, right? In the first 3 weeks, you learn how to manually take control, and it's repetition. It's like trying to run a marathon in a year, and you're going to have to just start running today, right? You got to start running, and then you're going to get a little more, you're going to get a little more, and you stack 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 or 6 different manual tools on top of each other. You manually program yourself, And now you have the tools. You haven't healed anything, but after 3 weeks, you have the manual tools to quiet your mind, to have negative emotions running through you and not let them overrun you. You could calm yourself down on demand whenever you want. Whew, you can feel good. And that's an amazing thing, but it's hard. And the reason why I make the next 2 weeks kind of soft weeks is because at the tail end of that 3 weeks, you get really good at taking manual control of our brains and what's going on inside of them. But then we start to realize how much what goes on in our minds has been affected by everybody around us. And for some people, this isn't a major deal, but especially for younger people who have a lot of friends, but really almost for anybody, when you start to get hypersensitive to every negative thought that comes into your mind and you have awareness of it, now all of a sudden you come around your friend Johnny, and Johnny is negative. And Johnny's had a bad day, and Johnny is bitching, and he is whining, and he's complaining about his wife and his job, and he's just getting screwed every day. And oh my gosh, and you can't believe what this guy said, and this guy on the road cut him off, and all this negativity, it's going to trigger yours. All this manual stuff is now triggering you, and the week or two after those first 3 weeks are very challenging because you have to start having conversations with all of your relationships. With Johnny, you've known him for 20 years and you love him, but dude, Johnny, like you can't do this. Like I can't process this information that you're bringing, all this negativity. It's causing me pain on the inside, and I want to be there for you, but this is causing me pain, and I don't know what to do other than to talk to you about this. And I'm hoping that as as your friend, you understand that I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to feel better, but every time you're saying something negative around me, it's causing me pain, and I'm hoping that we can work through this together. And some of these conversations, man, they go really bad. So you're having conversations with people addressing negativity, and then they'll come right back at you. Oh, what, you think you're better than me now? Whatever. These conversations, they become very, very challenging. But what's happening is we establish new boundaries, right? In order for our brain to be protected, for our peace to be protected, like you were talking about in your front yard, that peace, you can live like that 100% of your life, but you can't if somebody comes into that front yard yelling at you, bringing negativity into that front yard. You can't maintain that type of peace in that environment. Your environment just changed. So we become hypersensitive to our environments, and we have to establish new boundaries. Some friends need to go. Some friends need a conversation with, and some friends are already positive and whatever. You just share what's going on with you, and they're going to hug you and give you, and support you and move forward. But some of these conversations are difficult because they're with coworkers. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's your spouse. And those conversations are really, really challenging. But the beautiful thing is that on the back end of those conversations, some of those people that left, they come back in a month or two and go, man, Mike, Johnny comes back. He's like, man, you pissed me off and I got mad, but I realized, how much negative I was. And, I really started trying to change that. And I just want to say I'm sorry, and I appreciate your friendship. And, I truly understand what you were trying to say to me now. So by you having awareness and bringing that awareness to you, you've spread it now to your friends, and some of them are going to respond in a very positive way. But now you're bringing awareness to them and is allowing them to change. So it's like this chain reaction that's actually really beautiful because you're literally changing the world as you change yourself. And that's the way that that's where it's supposed to start with us as individuals. But that time frame is really challenging. So for a couple of weeks, we do some light work, we do some meditation, we become familiar with our chakra centers, and we learn what it actually means to love being you. Do some role playing stuff and just give people a different perspective on how they actually treat themselves. And so So when you talk about the encompassing the 10 weeks, why does it take so long? I mean, we're 5 weeks in and we haven't really healed anything. We've got some perspective changes, we've got manual tools, and we've kind of started altering our environment to make it more more friendly of an environment to protect ourselves a little bit. So I guess we have healed some things, but we haven't gone into the past and healed any of the pain from the past, which ultimately is what's causing most of our pain. Um, but so that's why it takes so long, because the next 3 weeks is digging in deep with your attachments to your identity, learning how to forgive yourself, others, just make a daily practice of forgiveness with everything. And then the reason I wrote this program or created it was week 8, which is learning how to go back in time and rewrite old negative core beliefs that were haunting you. Like with me, 5 years old in kindergarten, not knowing how to read, going back to that 5-year-old kid and rewriting that program in kindergarten when I first, when that program first got formed. And then, one thing I learned, as I was writing this whole thing and my life started to change, I started to realize that I was still unhappy in a lot of ways, and that if I don't live an authentic life, if I'm lying to myself or others, um, then I'm still not going to be happy. I could go back and rewrite every core belief, and I could learn manual tools, and I'm going to feel better. But there's always going to be a general unease in my life that I can't figure out, and it's very powerful for people to understand that truth is there. In my opinion, there are no lies, because the universe absorbs everything as what it is. But when you try to throw something that's not honest into the middle of all, it meets with reaction. The universe knows it's not the truth, so it's not going to flow, and it makes everything inside of you uneasy and feels weird, and it's hard to kind of explain. But you could do everything that you're supposed to do in this program and still feel miserable. If you're working at a job that you hate, if you're going home to a wife that you're not in love with anymore, and you're just staying there for the kids, your life can still be miserable. You still be filled with anxiety and depression because you're not living authentically. Um, so we really, 10 weeks is a lot of weeks, but I tried to encompass this to make it cover your entire life. And there are other things I could have included in all this, but I think I included the major stuff that's going to set people up for success.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like to me that the first part of it is just awareness and familiarity to the stuff that's been going on within you, but then also you become aware and familiar with, the people around you, and you almost become pretty sensitive to this type. Once you're aware of your own energy, I guess you could say, you become very sensitive to other people's energy, and especially if you've taken stock of what you need to confront and will confront here soon, and you need to create a boundary, create an environment for yourself that you could heal. Obviously you're going to become more sensitive to other people who are haven't taken stock themselves, because you've just taken your own stock. So it makes total sense. And then, yeah, 10 weeks is reasonable. If you're really gonna change your life, 10 weeks is not a hard ask. So, obviously it could be longer. I don't think it could be shorter. I mean, maybe it could for some people if they've already done a lot of work. If they've already done a lot of work, maybe then yeah. But yeah, it makes total sense to me.
The thing about it is it's really not over in 10 weeks either. So you've learned everything you need to learn from this program, all the different topics, but it's an ongoing process. Like, you take these tools and then you carry them with you for the rest of your life. You're not going to be able to rewrite all the core beliefs you have in 10 week. You don't even start it till week 8, and it's over, 3 weeks later. So, like, I've rewritten over 200 of my own, and doing one a week, you do the math on that. That's over 4 years. Like that's a lot of work that happens over a lot of time. And with each one, you just feel lighter, and it's easier to stay in the present moment. It's easier to bring yourself into that safe space that with where you're not time traveling. Um, but it takes time, right? And in the identity stuff, that stuff. When I first tried to do it, I took politics and being a Titans football fan off, but it took me a year and a half later to come back and get the big stuff. The husband, the wife, the husband, the dad, the grandfather. All of those things that are really big. My job title. Taking off all of those things, it felt like too big of an ask in the beginning. I wasn't mentally healthy enough to do that in the beginning. And so a lot of this stuff just takes time, and you have to revisit it all. This program is amazing, but it's an ongoing thing that you putting all this stuff in your backpack, and you're carrying this backpack with you as you move forward. So you have all the tools to navigate whatever you come across mentally over the next, really for the rest of your life. And you slowly just get better and better and better and better, and you kind of uh, move to a more peaceful place. The Buddhists say that there's 7 levels of hell and 7 levels of heaven, and it's not in the afterlife; it's here now. And your job is to move up through that in this lifetime, and these tools will help you move through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that, it's funny. I, when I was kind of, I would say my Christianity, my beliefs in the Bible were kind of unfolding itself into, what it is now. The first things that came to mind is, what if this is heaven? And what my mind has done is convinced itself that this is hell and this can't be heaven. And that really started to unfold things. There's other things as well, obviously, but I think that's a great way to end it, man. Is there anything else you feel like I didn't cover they would want us to cover and make content about?
No, I enjoyed the conversation. This has been fun.
Yes, sir.